Greetings, all my lovely students. This is Mr. O'Connor with yet again another screencast tutorial. This time it's American Slavery Notes number 4, and it's our fourth and final Cornell Notes for our American Slavery Unit, so congratulations for getting here. You've already looked at slave rebellions, slave revolts, you've looked at the triangular trade and the Middle Passage, and also kind of the history of slavery as we know it in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to skip around quite a bit as far as through these original first slides. Yep, independent practice. I will give you instructions for that at the end. But let's go ahead and start doing our notes with the same essential question that we've had. I know it's missing a question mark. Thanks for noticing. And our objective. So students will be able to analyze John Brown's attack on Harper's Ferry in order to examine radical abolitionists. So something we'll look at, you need to know who John Brown is, you need to know what Harper's Ferry is, and of course what the term radical means, and abolitionists if you don't know that already. So our first set of notes here is going to be on the U.S. legacy of slavery. So we talked about kind of the beginnings of slavery in general in the Western Hemisphere, but when was that first time that a slave or an African person set foot on the American soil and was set to be a slave? So, and here we go. So in what's soon to be U.S. soil, in 1619, Jamestown meets a Dutch warship that happens to have slaves on board, and they happen to, the people in the ship, the sailors and the captain, they need food. So they say, hey, Jamestown, John Smith, near the Powhatan Indians, you should remember, hey, how about we trade you some slaves for food? We need food. You guys are growing this new form of tobacco, which is killing it in England, but tobacco is a crop that takes a lot of work. So take these people, make them work, and bam, success, we'll get food, we'll see you later, peace, I love you. So that's basically what happens. And then in 1636, 17 years later, Massachusetts finally sends the first ship destined for Africa, foregoing the rest of the triangular trade, just goes straight to Africa, picks up slaves, and brings them back to the U.S. So that's pretty big stuff right there. Now, it's not the same form of slavery that we see much later on. In fact, a lot of these original slaves become free. They own their own land, they keep their own money, they pass it on to their children, etc., etc. So, yeah, much different than we see later. And that image was, of course, the Dutch ship landing. Abraham Lincoln, you'll notice I don't spend a lot of time on historical figures, which some people find a shame, but I'm leaving the door wide open for you guys to do a design project that teaches us more about these figures that I don't teach you about. Feel free. Elected president in 1861, the Civil War kind of starts as a result because the South knew that he was going to abolish slavery. Knew it was going to happen, he already said it. Now, he didn't say that from the beginning of his political career, and in fact, you're going to read something, if you choose the quest, you're going to read a couple of different quotes on what he says about African Americans, and you're not going to be happy about it, because he wasn't necessarily talking about equality between the races. In fact, he wasn't talking about that. But he realized he needed to do something about slavery. During the Civil War, yeah, he's a popular president, he's known as that, boom, but my argument is that anytime you're a president during a war, you're going to be popular because the people need to get behind your cause. And you're choosing a good cause because you've already felt the temperature of the water and you are going to do the right thing, what most people want. Goes with the North. He wants to eliminate slavery, but the Emancipation Proclamation does not set one slave free. Because at that point, the South had already broken away from the North. Boom. So he's making a law that they're already not listening to because they already want to be their own country, their own republic. So, yeah, that's, the one good that this document ends up doing, that this piece of legislation does, is that slaves in the South hear about it and they're like, well, let's head up to the North now. They're no longer returning us to the South, which they used to do with the Runaway Slave Act. But now we can run up there if we get away. And we can join the Union side and fight against the Southern slave owners. So make no mistake, Abraham Lincoln's number one priority was to keep the country together. And you should know that. Very, very political man, very good man in a lot of ways, but not necessarily because he believed in equality between the slaves or African Americans and white people. Abolitionism. Hope I'm not moving too fast. Sometimes I'm moving too fast for my tongue. Many U.S. citizens opposed slavery, mostly in the North, not just African Americans. Well, there were white people who were very much against it. Pennsylvania, even right around Philly. Mennonites from Germantown, Pennsylvania, were the first to speak out about it, and people from Pennsylvania were amazing that way because the Quakers were there too, who got along with Native Americans, who welcomed them into their community, also got along with African Americans eventually and invited them into their community. So great stuff here going on with people in Pennsylvania speaking out against slavery and other injustices. An abolitionist, well, you should know that by now, trying to get rid of slavery. Frederick Douglass, a very famous one. Maybe as famous, maybe not necessarily for being against slavery, but Thomas Paine doing his writing and saying like, hey, we want to consider ourselves civilized. You can't be civilized and keep slaves. They don't match, doesn't make sense. So if we want to be the people we're saying that we are, we need to eliminate slavery. It needs to be abolished 100%. Boom, this is back in 1776, almost 100 years before Frederick Douglass and people are fighting over it in the Civil War. So let's bring up this man, John Brown, another abolitionist, a radical abolitionist, I say. Does he look like a terrorist? No. Well, let's see what he did. John Brown, already involved in some sort of terrorist action in Kansas when states were voting on whether to become slave states or not, these new states coming in to the United States. There was a popular vote. And so people like John Brown, who were anti-slavery, would show up in these states and fight off the people who were pro-slavery, and in fact killed people to stop them from voting for slavery. He was that much against it. So this man, very much maybe what we thought Abraham Lincoln would be, who obviously wasn't. John Brown takes it to a higher level when he attacked Harper's Ferry, a federal arsenal which is full of weapons for the government, federal, in order to to do what? Well, you're going to look at that video and you're going to find that out, so I don't want to give it away. It's one of the questions, but he's got a big plan, or he had a big plan. Radical abolitionist, he's an extremist. You probably heard radical and extremist before. Sometimes we hear about movements, and there's the radical person who's taken it too far, the extremist who's taken it way too far with religion. So these aren't people who necessarily exemplify the movement, but take it further past the point where it's actually deemed to be correct. Is he a terrorist? You tell us. You need to do your YouTube video. You also need to do a summary, but you got to watch this first. Here's the questions. Copy and paste them into your notes, just as they are, and then go ahead and watch the YouTube video, John Brown's Harper's Ferry. Don't forget your summary. You guys, this is the last American slavery notes, so congratulations for finishing. Get on to your design project. Get on to doing something more exciting, and thank you. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. Peace.